Imagine a future where humanity didn't disappear. It's simply lost. A world where the night belongs to everyone, the sun is a weapon, and blood is more valuable than money. This is not a post-apocalypse filled with ruins. It's a functioning society built on exploitation, fear, and desperation. This is Daybreakers. The movie opens in the year 2019, and from the very first scene, it makes one thing painfully clear. This world is broken. A young girl sits at a desk, writing a letter. Her words are filled with sadness and exhaustion. She talks about how she will never grow older, never mature, never experience change. She sounds trapped, frozen in time, and completely hopeless. As dawn approaches, she quietly leaves her home and walks outside to watch the sunrise. When she looks up, her eyes glow yellow. She's a vampire. The sun rises, and within seconds, her entire body bursts into flames. 10 years earlier, in 2009, a global plague swept across the planet. It began with something as insignificant as an infected bat. The virus spread rapidly, turning humans into vampires at an uncontrollable rate. At first, vampirism seemed like a miracle. Aging stopped, illnesses vanished, death became optional, but the price was steep. Sunlight became deadly, forcing society underground during the day. And more importantly, vampires could only survive by consuming human blood. Now in 2019, vampires make up nearly the entire population, while humans account for barely 5% of the species. Cities no longer function during daylight hours. Streets are empty, highways are abandoned, entire urban landscapes sit frozen in silence. But when the sun sets, civilization wakes up. At night, the world feels strangely normal. Vampires commute to work, ride subways, drink blood-infused coffee, socialize in bars, and live the same lives humans once did. Corporations still exist. Governments still operate. Police still enforce the law. Blood cafes replace coffee shops. Blood bags are rationed and regulated. Shortages are common, and riots break out when supplies are reduced. Despite appearing stable, the system is collapsing because the human population is shrinking faster than expected. Blood isn't just food, it's medicine. When vampires go too long without consuming enough blood, their bodies begin to deteriorate. The first visible sign is physical. Ears elongate, skin tightens, posture changes. Then the mind begins to fail. Eventually, the vampire transforms into a subsider, a feral bat-like creature driven purely by hunger. Subsiders have no emotions, no intelligence, and no loyalty. They attack anything they encounter. The terrifying truth is this: without a solution, every vampire will become a subsider. The dominant species is heading toward extinction. Our story follows Edward Dalton, a vampire hematologist working for Bromley Marks Pharmaceuticals, the world's largest blood supplier. Edward is calm, intelligent, and deeply conflicted. Unlike most vampires, he refuses to drink real human blood. Instead, he survives on animal blood substitutes, which barely sustain him and leave him constantly weakened. Every day, Edward walks past horrifying chambers filled with humans imprisoned in blood harvesting machines. Tubes drain their blood while machines keep them alive, just long enough to be useful. Edward despises this system, but he stays because he believes he can fix it. His job is to create a synthetic blood substitute, something that could eliminate the need for human farming and save both species. So far, though, he has failed. Edward attends a meeting with his boss, Charles Bromley, his colleague Christopher Caruso, military leaders, and government officials. They discuss a disturbing experiment conducted on a death row inmate who was deprived of blood. The results were horrifying. The subject's frontal lobe completely degenerated. His ears grew longer, his body twisted, his mind vanished. He became a subsider. The message is clear. Without blood, vampirism is unsustainable. Later, Bromley takes Edward aside. He reveals that vampirism once saved his life by curing his cancer, but his daughter refused to be turned and ran away. Bromley claims he wants to save humanity, but believes sacrifices are unavoidable. Those sacrifices now include human testing. Despite his doubts, Edward participates in the first human trial of the blood substitute. A soldier volunteers. At first, the injection appears successful. The subject feels fine. Then his body begins to convulse violently. Blood pours from his mouth. His skin erupts into massive blisters. Emergency medication briefly stabilizes him. Seconds later, his entire body explodes. The experiment is an absolute failure. Edward leaves the lab shaken, disturbed, and questioning everything. That night, Edward drives home while news reports describe violent riots caused by blood rationing. As he scratches his ear, he notices something horrifying in his reflection. His ears are starting to grow. Edward is becoming a subsider. Distracted by panic, he nearly crashes into another vehicle. The other car slams into a fence and Edward rushes to help. Suddenly, a crossbow bolt pierces his arm. The attackers are humans. Their leader is Audrey Bennett, armed and cautious. Police sirens approach. Edward convinces the humans to hide in his car, activates its sunlight protection system, and lies to the police to protect them. Before leaving, Audrey casually wishes Edward a happy birthday. She knows exactly who he is. Later that night, Edward receives a visit from his brother, Frankie Dalton, a soldier whose job is to hunt humans. Frankie brings a rare birthday gift, a bottle of pure human blood. Edward refuses to drink it. The brothers argue fiercely. Frankie accuses Edward of hypocrisy, condemning human farming while working for the company that profits from it. The argument escalates until a subsider breaks into the house, drawn by the smell of blood. The brothers barely manage to kill it. When police arrive, Edward realizes the creature was once their gardener, someone who had resorted to feeding on himself to survive. Subsiders are no longer rare. The next morning, Edward wakes up to find Audrey in his house, pointing a crossbow at him. She explains that she's part of a human resistance group searching for vampires they can trust. She believes Edward can help them find a real solution. She leaves behind a map and disappears. Edward follows the map into the countryside. There, he meets Audrey again, and an elderly man named Lionel Elvis Cormack. Lionel tells Edward something impossible. He used to be a vampire. Now, he's human. Before Lionel can explain, the military arrives, led by Frankie. Audrey pushes Frankie into the sunlight, and they escape in Edward's car. A dangerous chase follows, ending when a military truck collapses a bridge and explodes. Safe for the moment, Lionel finally explains what happened. He was weakened from hunger when he crashed his car. Thrown into sunlight, he caught fire and fell into a river. The fire was extinguished. When he emerged, he was human again. Edward realizes the truth. This isn't a substitute, it's a cure. They hide at a vineyard used as a human safe house. Edward studies Lionel's blood and theorizes that the cure must occur inside the body during controlled sunlight exposure. They modify airtight fermentation tanks to allow sunlight exposure and rapid fire suppression. Edward volunteers to test the cure on himself. At sunrise, he is exposed to sunlight inside the tank. The first attempt fails, the second attempt fails. On the third attempt, they let him burn longer. This time, it works. Edward survives. He steps into the sunlight, human again. The military raids the vineyard, forcing Edward, Audrey, and Lionel to flee. Elsewhere, Bromley's daughter is forcibly turned into a vampire. She later degenerates into a subsider and is executed in daylight, a moment that shatters Frankie's loyalty. Edward seeks help from Christopher, revealing the cure. But Christopher betrays them, alerting the company. Audrey is captured. Edward escapes underground with Lionel. Edward allows himself to be captured and taken to Bromley. Pretending to surrender, Edward convinces Bromley to bite him. Edward's blood carries the cure. Bromley begins transforming into a human. Edward exposes him to starving vampires who feed on Bromley, curing themselves without realizing it. Chaos erupts. Frankie sacrifices himself, allowing soldiers to feed on him and turn human, triggering mass infighting. The system collapses. As sunlight pours into the building, Edward mourns his brother. But hope finally exists. The cure can spread. The world can change. The movie ends with Edward, Audrey, and Lionel driving into the sunrise, no longer afraid of the day. Because now, it's not too late. Thank you for watching and subscribe for more recaps.